Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Needed Art History, where I am sitting telling you some art history stories while occasionally I'll disappoint knitting. And welcome to another video where today we are going to be traveling finally to Asia. I finally got my hands on this topic, so specifically to Japan. And as you can see by the name of the video, we are going to be talking about Kawase Hasui, one of the most prominent and amazing artist from Japan, as it turned out. I never heard about him prior to my little research, so unfortunately not a lot of information about him, so we will not be talking just about him today. We will talk a little bit, we'll dive briefly into some styles of Japanese printmaking, which is important, I mean, to understand Hasui and where he belonged in terms of his style. But still, I will link down below a few books about, not specifically about Hasui, but there will be some catalogs of his works, and also some of the books where there are other examples of artists of this period of time who were on the same level. Well, maybe not on the same level, but they were as famous as Hasui, and they are as important as Hasui also to Japanese art. Also, I accidentally found a video about Hasui working, so I understood it's him. And it was just like, it's like 20 or 40 minutes, something like this, of just like literally the process of his work, like how he creates his print pieces from A to Z. So I think it will be interesting to some of you. I will link it down below also, because I mean, I'm really fond of him. I never heard about him before that. I stumbled upon his works just randomly on TikTok. Someone just made this video about just his works. It was not about him, even it was just his works. And I was just like, why? I need to know who you are, what is that, and what are those works. So here we are. I will not need anything today. Again, I don't want to at all. Even though I am needing some stuff, but just no. I will try to put also as many artworks as possible into these videos. They might not be also chronological. Today some of the words, they will not support my words. They will just be the illustration to the topic itself. Without further ado, let's dive into our topic today. Hasui now is regarded as one of the major Japanese landscape artists of the 20th century. So originally, his original name is Kawase Bunjiro, and he was born in Tokyo in 1883 to, well, rather average families, we can say. He was the son of a silk braid merchant, and though his father wanted him to join the family business, and well, Hasui actually was in a family business for quite a while, but his mother came from an artistic family and she supported her son's creative interests. So in some of the resources you will actually see that his uncle, I mean Hasui's uncle, his mom's brother, like that. So he was a kabuki theater actor. But it is said just in some sources, so I'm not sure if we know this for a fact, but probably this is why the family regularly attended kabuki performances, and well, this connection to the theater persisted throughout Hasui's life actually. So at first he was working in his family business, as I said, but in 1908 his sister with her husband, they took the responsibility of the business completely on themselves, and that's how Hasui was finally free to devote himself to art. So he was passionate about art since an early childhood. It's as usually with all these artists, right? And Hasui began his artistic career studying Western style oil painting and watercolor, but later he was inspired to train actually in printmaking after he saw the series of another Japanese artist Ito Shinsui's, and he saw his series 8 Views of Omi. So he began to study Western style art in 1907, so a bit prior, when he devoted himself to art completely. He was especially interested in landscapes. So he took his first lessons, his first guidance from an artist, Okada Saburosuke, and at this point our artist, right, he already showed enormous talent also. And in 1910, he became a pupil of Kaburaki Gyokata, who gave him the art name Hasui. By this time, Hasui was earning money for living through designing some sachets, some magazine illustration, posters, and also patterns for sashes. But most importantly, from this meeting with Kiyokata was that Kiyokata introduced Hasui to Shozaburo Watanabe, who published his first landscape prints in 1919. And well, Watanabe overall, he was the driving force of the SHIN Hanga movement and encouraged, supported, and also promoted Hasui's career in Japan and also abroad. And from then on, Hasui worked extensively as a designer of this landscape prints for Watanabe, even though he worked with some other printing houses, but as I understood, Watanabe was his main place where he worked. So because there's not a lot also just about Hasui himself, so I decided that we can also dive a bit into all of this printmaking world. So just briefly, obviously, I mentioned already such thing as SHIN Hanga. So what is this? It translates as new block print, basically, and this is the title given to works by the new wave of ukiyo-e artists that emerged during the 20th century. But what is ukiyo-e also? So ukiyo-e is a genre of engravings and drawing in Japan, which was formed in the 17th century during the Edo period, and it ended, well, somewhere around 19th century, the end of 19th century. So the main theme of these paintings is landscapes and the everyday life of people. And at the turn of the 18th and 19th century, Japan turned into, well, basically we can say like a police country where, you know, even Buddhist monks, they were sometimes made like spies or something like that. So there were like, basically what I mean, a lot of censorship there. The behavior of residents was carefully regulated by a very large number of orders and different circulars and etc. And the conditions of the peasants deprived of all privileges was especially difficult in feudal Japan. So there were so many prohibitions, you know, at some point that some of them were extremely absurd actually. So I saw something like a law or something like that for the number of toys allowed for the merchants' children, something like that. And obviously such violations were very hard on people, and so obviously we as human beings, we want to have fun sometimes, so people started to have, you know, all of these hidden places where they can go and relax a bit. Well, men first of all, and so I'm talking about, you know, this like tea houses, geisha houses, eateries, red district lights, obviously, where we can go without that. Yeah, and so at some point numbers of all of these places started to increase. Thus those basically, you know, little islands, as we can say, of pleasure and primitive entertainment gained a name ukiyo. So then the literary works with you know, plots of these adventures, love, some daring pranks, and etc. Was called ukiyo sochi, and illustrations for these literary works with plots of adventures or love were called ukiyo-e. However, ukiyo-e will eventually break away from these literary works and became just, you know, it's a separate graphic genre, but the use of the number of colors will be limited by another order also after a certain period of time. And so generally ukiyo-e artists were allowed to use just 7 colors. There were also a traditional size to ukiyo-e, so it was called horoban, and at the end of the 18th century the sheet measured was well, 31.9, well, 32 we can say, by 14.5 centimeters. It was generally, you know, this standard size was determined basically by the size of this matrix board. So when planning some kind of image that was larger than these boards already, you know, they were just putting together 3 standard sheets. It was just glued together. And here's one, you know, point of it, that Western European art critics, art historians, wrongly call those things triptychs, according to, you know, their own analogies in paintings, what we have in Europe here. Yeah, so it's not really correct to call those works triptychs, because, you know, in European sense, there were no triptychs in Japan. They were just not made in this sense in Japanese art. This is, a common and long-established practice of working on several sheets divided by those vertical stripes. So this is considered to be one piece of work. And ukiyo-e graphics were not also free art at all, as we can say, because the process was not directed by artists. In this network of manufacturers, the artist, matrix carver, the owner of the painting house, the censor also, the Japanese artist was basically on the last place, and he received the smallest salary out of all of them, and he did not have any rights also to his works. So the owner of the printing house, who negotiated the permission to print from the censor, he would remain at the end of the day the matrix boards and this piece of art, and he would be the one who would own the rights to this work. It does make sense, and so he would be also the one who would make the most profit out of all of this work, basically. And also interestingly, that the paper on which the engraving was printed preserved the seals of the censors and a number of inscriptions, which obviously now is extremely important and very helpful to helpful to historians who are trying to make some kind of periodization or study certain works or something like this. And this gives us the information about the process of censorship, this permissions, printing, and etc, etc. So basically the information that is not most of the time preserved in the documents. And I mean, having also this stuff, these stamps on paper is very common practice when paper started to be huge in Europe also. So I presume that it was the practice in Asia, because paper comes from Asia, and it come to Europe just in starting from 7th century AD through Spain, thanks to Arabic people when they got to Spain, and through Spain it got to France, and through France it got then to Germany, and it just basically spread throughout the Europe. And then Europe started to produce its own paper. So obviously Spain, France, Germany, they were the earliest, they were the countries that started to create their own manufacturers, the earliest, and then followed by the Netherlands, I believe, some countries of our Eastern Europe. But I'm not sure, when paper became like a thing when we started to have manufacturers of paper in Ukraine, to be honest. Never stumbled upon this information. But all of them had their own stamps on the paper. And I mean, when paper is clear, you can see it very well. If it's like when you have some kind of drawing there, or it's in a book, and you have some text there, so yeah, it's harder to see, but you can always, just put it on a light and you will see at some point where the stamp is. So yeah, so I think I was talking about this topic somewhere, because I remember talking about that, but I don't remember where. I think maybe it was about Knip. Yeah, but let's move on with our Japanese topic. Unlike European censorship, which grew, as we can say, in the clutches of sexual Christianity, Japanese censorship did not prohibit actually any basically pornographic images. And in ukiyo-e there was a genre of sunga for decades that specialized actually in such scenes and scenes of the life of the red light quarters, red light districts. Censorship was abolished only in 1876 during the Meiji period of reforms, and the popularity of ukiyo-e engravings grew during the first half of the 19th century and recruited the most talented artists to its ranks in this period. And costumers, it was also very popular among people. So people were buying those things and they were decorating their houses. There's sliding doors, there's screens. So all of this could have been decorated with ukiyo-e. So it was kind of a little renaissance, I don't know if I can call it like this, but yeah, at some point it became again very, very popular. However, also, you know, physical beauty of a person or our body, as you know, for example, in the art of Italy, it did not attract Japanese artists and did not spread in this genre. The only exception was the face, so you know, beauty of geishas and actors in their roles and etc. And eventually, I mean, the portrait as a genre, it became part of the Japanese graphics, but still, you know, it was not at this sense that it was that we're talking like in European art, for example, right? It was kind of a portrait with you know, some kind of like of some kind of individual, but it still had these features of generalization, of convention, and it was not like, you know, really like the portrait, if it makes sense. So perhaps the most famous example of such engravings is Hokusai's Great Wave. So as for SHIN Hanga, so the turbulent artistic life of Japan at the beginning of the 20th century was obviously characterized by these passionate discussions, you know, and intense searches. So there were a very big discourse obviously also going on between, you know, assimilating the artistic experience of Western Europe and United States to their own art, as it was done in industrial sector, you know, with all of these new technologies that they also assimilated into their own and developed even more. And so some artists started to argue that they need to do the same thing with art, but obviously there were part of them were like, no, we need to preserve our own very rich national technologies, and we need to do our own things rather than, you know, just borrow something from someone else. And so during this time, you know, this fresh generation of artists came to the forefront of the arts, of the art scene, inspired in equal parts by the national rich legacy, well, especially during this Edo and Meiji periods, and the you know, new stuff that they had access to from Western world, from Western Europe, and from the US. And that's how at the beginning of the 20th century, Susaku Hanga and Son Hanga emerged, the two new trends in the art of Japanese graphics. Shin Hanga continued the traditions of the 19th century's ukiyo-e, even with its printing technology, so there were just like few modernizations made to that. The goal was both to, you know, continue the traditions of ukiyo-e woodblock printing and also to replace cheap prints with more high quality one, and well, they became also a bit more expensive. However, interestingly, Shin Hanga was more popular in the US when it all started, just so the US citizens, you know, US like rich people, they started to buy a lot of things from Japan, starting from I don't know, like furniture and ending with artwork. So when it all emerged, as I remember reading, so in Japan it was not so popular, like Japanese people were not so fond of it, something like that, but well, Americans were extremely fond of this, they really liked it, and they were buying it like literally just with like in enormous amount. So that's why we don't really have, well, we Japanese people don't really have a lot of good examples of Shin Hanga during its early periods, because it was literally bought by Americans, and it was actually, well, it was the Americans who ensured the financial success of the new engraving in the first place. But then Japanese people, like Japanese art critics and art sellers and etc., I think they got they got to their senses a bit, and they stopped selling it, and they were, you know, collecting all of this inside of the country also, so it started to gain more popularity within Japan. So thematically, Shin Hanga was dominated by landscapes also, and bijinga, so it is images of attractive women, again, obviously. So Shin Hanga was actively supported by Japanese printers, as I said, after a certain period of time. Publishing houses such as Doi, Kawaguchi, Unsodo, they also contributed to its development. Those are those other printing houses in which Hasui worked, as I mentioned at the beginning. But well, the main force behind Shin Hanga was Watanabe Shozaburo. So he was one of the main supporters of the artists who worked in Shin Hanga style. And with his death, the support for artists began to fade away, began to decline basically. Typically incorporating Western elements, most predominantly from European Impressionism, which is kind of interesting when I was reading that, because well, European Impressionism is highly inspired by Japanese art in the first place. So it's an interesting it's like interesting correlations. I don't know what word to use here in English. So again, they were like Japanese artists. They were incorporating those elements into their classical Japanese forms, and these artists, they crafted this hybrid style which came to be known as Shin Hanga. But they were also not outside of politics, because again, art is not outside of politics. This is what I really like. This is my dream, that people will understand this one day, that nothing is outside the politics. Not art, not culture, not music, nothing. And so at certain point, Shin Hanga was used as this presentation of idealized version of Japan by the government also. Yeah, so it's still, at the end of the day, it was, as I understood, it was a bit more free in terms of censorship as it was with ukiyo-e, but still at the end of the day, some of the artists were still working for the government, with the government, and they were creating these idealized versions of Japan, especially. I think a lot of us at this point, we know history of Japan, and we know that they were not, in 20th century, Japan was not the best guys, as we can say. So Shin Hanga was kind of used for, covering people's eyes about this also. But let's get back to Hasui. So 1920 then. So his first prints were printed by Watanabe in 1919, but in 1920 he designed his first snow prints with this falling snow and everything, and those works are considered to be one of the most originals from his work, and also like one of the best of his works. Like for me, I completely agree with art critics. I also, out of all of them, I think those are also one of my favorites. However, then in 1923 happened a, apparently very famous earthquake, a very strong earthquake, and it destroyed a lot of things. Yeah, and so it destroyed actually Hasui's house. He basically lost everything: his house, his sketchbooks, his wooden printing blocks, almost like there's like more than 200 of his original sketches, and etc. etc. So the prints that predate this event, the 1923, are extremely rare and in a very great demand today. However, Watanabe still, he helped him financially, so that Hasui can just, go on a trip somewhere through Japan and create a new series of sketches, and this is exactly what he did. And in addition, Hasui continued to work for other publishers to earn some additional money also. And though the rest of his life Hasui worked almost exclusively on landscape and townscape prints based on, again, sketches that he made in Tokyo, and during his travels around Japan, he traveled quite a bit. The vast majority of Hasui's prints were published by Shozaburo Watanabe. What I remember from my course of Asian art when I had it in university was very brief, so we unfortunately didn't really get into Japanese art specifically. But I remember reading that Japanese artists, they have a little bit different, those old artists, they had different philosophies, we can say, of working with art, not like Europeans, that and especially in this period of time, we know that in at the beginning of late 19th century, begin 20th century, with again Impressionism or the Barbizons, prior to Impressionists, they were working on plein air, right? So they were just on site painting what they're seeing in front of them. In Japan, it was not really a thing. I don't know, during 20th century, but prior to that, it was not really a thing. So their main philosophy was that they did not want to, they did not want to show exactly what they are seeing in front of them. It was important to show what they felt when they saw this. So they were making sketches, and they were coming back then into their studio, and they were working in their studios, just in their studios. Well, basically, like, you know, like Europeans were working also, because, well, prior to, again, the Barbizons, so late 19th century, and Impressionist, plein air, it was not a thing. And it was actually, you know, some of the artists who were working like this in, like, 15th century, for example, 16th century, they actually were made fun of, that they were kind of, you know, crazy or something like that. So it was not really such a popular thing. So everyone worked in the studios always, but again, with European artists, they tried to show as clear as possible what was in front of them. So the main idea was to literally, basically copy, as we can say. But with Japanese artists, it was what they felt. It's not what they saw, it's what they felt. That's why a lot of their, like, more older paintings are so whimsical, as we can say, mystical even, you know, there's no perspective there, or at least like this more academical perspective, right? It's just, you know, mountains upon the mountains, and it's just you looking at it into all of this, and it's not not a lot of people will be able, you know, to look at certain piece and be like, oh, I know this place, it's like there in Japan or something like this. Like it can be done with definitely with European paintings. Well, Japanese, as far as I understand, Chinese art, the same thing. It was not about what they saw, it's about how they felt in the moment. It's about what they remembered, how they remembered. So it's, you know, it's this more it walks somewhere, this word walks somewhere, someone in English in my brain, but I cannot remember that. Spiritual, yes, spiritual, this here we go. Not a very spiritual person, as you can see. So yes, it's more about their spiritual connections to all of this, you know, it's about nature also, and stuff like that. And as I already said, the vast majority of Hasui's prints were published by Watanabe. In addition also to Hasui's main body of works that consist of over than 600 prints at this point, his work was issued in a less conventional format. His researchers, or, you know, the art critics that are interested in him, they are saying that there's like three main formats for Hasui's art. So the first one is Octava, which is 85 on 130 millimeters. Then it's Postcard, 85 on 56 millimeters, and Koban, so it is 115 to 177 millimeters. And well, these works are collectively known as Hasui's postcard prints. So first, these works were marketed in Watanabe's catalog of 1931, and then from now on they continue to be, so that the other also, a lot of them were listed in 1936, like Watanabe catalog, and etc. So some of these designs were just basically a redo from like full-size images, from bigger images, and others were specifically made in this small size, and so the small size was intentional. They were also intended for use as Christmas cards, the larger one made into calendars or glued onto scrolls. So the postcard prints are unsigned, they only have Hasui's seal, and generally they do not also have a publisher seal. And the images are often surrounded by a white board, so basically like traditional postcards. During the Pacific War, then, he spent much time back in Shiobara, Hasui, and after the war he was used by the government to represent this gentler side of Japan in tourist publication. And in 1953, then, one of his works, Zojoji in Snow, was commissioned as an intangible cultural asset to represent the cooperative skills of the traditional print methods of printmaking. And then in 1956, he was named a living national treasure in Japan, something like this. So it is apparently the highest honor a living artist could receive at the time. So I'm not sure if it still exists, such thing there. So maybe, you know, I didn't Google it. Yeah. So he was recognized during his lifetime. However, the next year, in 1957, he died, unfortunately. So during his career, he produced an enormous amount of works. As I already mentioned, over 600. So We talked in some of the videos about European artists such as Rubens and also Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun, that both of them are prolific artists, you know, that they left more than 600 works that we know are theirs. They're signed and everything, and they are considered to be like the most fruitful artists in the world. However, again, we need to be a bit skeptical when Western European art critics are saying around the world, because their world, it ends in the border of Austria somewhere, you know. They are not considering anything else the world. So we have Hasui also, who was such an amazing, like extremely talented artist. And I can say that in terms of like my favorite stuff, because again, there's not a lot of info about him, so I will put my little thoughts in this video, even though I don't really like to do that. I really like him. I never heard about him obviously before. Now you can actually see him and hear about him in the context that he was the one who inspired Studio Ghibli. So I suppose Hayao Miyazaki was inspired by him, etc, etc. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I can see that. And what I really liked about his works is that you can like you can see this, you know, it feels a bit cartoonish, but at the same time it feels very real. So it's this strange combination of these styles, I don't know how to call it correctly, and yeah, and so they are kind of also generalized at the same time, but there's a lot of details also there. So yeah, so it's very interesting. You know, you want to look at them for quite a bit, and this is what I really like in art, when you want to look at those art pieces. And you know, just as in terms of aesthetics, maybe you don't want to get away from them. You know, you don't stand there and just, you know, with this face and try, you know, you're just trying to understand what the hell is that, because it does not make any sense to anyone, to be honest, and it's just some pretentious shit. I'm sorry, but with him it's like, it's very simple, but at the same time you want to stand there and you want to look at them. With his snow works, this is like why I really like them, because this is why I like Monet. I know very at this point very mainstream, but I genuinely really like Monet. And I like Monet because because of the movement that he shows in his paintings. And I'm not talking about, you know, moment of the wind or something like this when you can clearly see, you know, that something going on. I'm talking about this dynamics that is not clear at first, but when the more you look at the painting, the more you start to imagine how things can go on the painting. And where is my... I will show you what I mean. I think it's somewhere here. Wait a second. I found this bag that I have. So this is like, that is one of the best examples I think that we can do. Right, the woman with the parasol, so his wife and his son. This is one of my favorite works of his. And what I'm talking about is that, like, yeah, we clearly can see that there's wind, the dynamic and everything. It's not a static work, obviously, plus the brushstrokes and everything. But what I'm talking about is that the more I'm looking at this work, the more I feel that, you know, she and he and the boy will start to move, basically. That they literally just stopped, looked at me, you know, with this question, are you coming finally or no? And the moment I will blink and they will just be gone. If it makes sense what I'm trying to say, like in English at least, because obviously in Ukrainian I would explain it way better than in English, but that's the same feeling that I have with works, this snow one, that at first you look at these works and they're like, yeah, snowing day and everything, and it's snowing, and you can see that there's some kind of wind because snow is not falling straight, it's falling, you know, diagonally or something like this. But the more you look at these works, the more you start to kind of move a bit. And I mean, I feel it even when I look at the screen, so I'm very curious to see those works in real life. It will be extremely interesting, no matter how good quality the photo is online. when you're looking at them in real life, it's a bit different, you know, especially in terms of color, because again, no matter how good your camera is, it will not pick up the original colors of the paintings. So same goes with Hasui. Some of his works are very static and they're not so interesting, but again, this series with snow, for example, it's they are genuinely amazing. And I'm watching, like, you know, I'm looking at them. The more I look at them, the more, you know, I can feel this snow. Literally, it's like it's either going with the wind or it's just falling straight. Whatever you can see, you can feel those little dots that they are literally moving. And again, this is what I like in Monet very, very much, in a lot of his works, that you know, your fantasy, your head wants to go there. It wants to create this scenario for this painting, and that's why I think that is like one of the highest level that an artist can achieve. When you look at some painting, it gets to you, it gets into your head, and you just start to imagine yourself, and you feel yourself part of the painting, and not like you're a watcher, you know, as like a lot of paintings from 15th century, for example, when they started to do these tricks, placing some kind of character somewhere, you know, in the middle of the painting that will look at you. And that's, you know, how they wanted to engage their viewer into their painting, but it's still like, you know, felt that you are still a viewer and you are just being recognized that you are viewing them, but you are not part of the painting. With certain artists, again, Monet, with Hasui, I felt myself like this, that I became part of the painting. They emerged me into their painting and they wanted me to be in their paintings. And yeah, and so I really appreciated that in Hasui's works, because again, it's not a lot of artists out there who are doing that, even though it sounds a bit... It sounds very art critic, I think. No, it was extremely art historian, something like that. It doesn't make any sense, to be honest, and that's why I'm struggling with art history a bit and art critics a bit. That, you know, sometimes you are saying such bollocks that you are just, or you're writing something and you're rereading that, or you're re-listening to yourself and you're being like, what the hell, like it doesn't make any sense. I can't believe that it's a real profession, and that's like, there's people like me who are, you know, just sitting telling this, I'm sorry, shit to anyone, and they're making money out of that, and you're just like, huh, interesting. But yeah, but I mean, still at the end of the day, maybe it will make a bit sense for some of you out there. But well, I will finish here. Not a lot about Hasui himself, unfortunately. I really wanted to finally get somewhere into Asia, and I mean, I really want, and there will be a lot of videos about Asia more, and about Africa also. I'm saying this for as long as I have this channel, to be honest. I really want to get into those subjects, but you know, you need to make a lot of research, and I don't have a lot of time to do this research now. Hopefully I will bit by bit, you know, go into certain more deeper topics about this about different countries from this continent. Yeah, so I was very happy when I found Hasui, and well, unfortunately there's not a lot, but there's a lot of his works that we can look into, and it's something new also. So yeah, so at the end of the day, I still hope that you liked this video and you found something new and interesting for yourself. And I mean, like, sorry for my rambling a bit at the end of the video. As usually, the most important stuff for me is that you found something new for yourself today and you learned something new today. So I wish all the best for you. Hope to see you in the next videos. Bye bye.